that state.
Oh, that thing, anti-Semitism there, yeah. That has been crazy with this president of the Senate, of the FSU Senate, doing a remark. But the thing is like this, that university leadership can't do much about it. And really, students have to vote, take them out. And since it's summer and the Jewish students are not here, there was a second vote, but it couldn't really get them out. So, so I think they'll probably get them out by the fall. But I've been in touch with the president, and they're very friendly. But it's just that on this particular thing, they can't do much about. There's nothing like concrete that they could do.
Right.
Really in the hands of the student body. I'm in touch with the president about it. We talk about it, and we're trying to figure out what to do. I mean, one of the problems is there was some other faculty members that were adding some comments, anti-Israeli comments on.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. Hi, William. How are you?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, David.
Good to see you. Okay, so first let me just see a second here. Let me just share screen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing screen here, and the reason why I'm going to be sharing screen, even though I don't have to show you on the screen, but we're doing it because I find out that by me, by me sharing screen this way, hold on 1 second. Okay. Sharing, give me a second, sorry. It's not what I want to share. Give me just a second. Okay. Okay, let me share the screen here. Okay. You can just ignore the screen, but I just found out that the way to do it on Facebook Live where you don't see you, you only see me, is to do it that way. So unless you don't mind that they see you, then we could do it the other way, but to keep your privacy. And then at some point we're going to turn off the recording and talk to that thing. So I'm just going to let her know to turn on. Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about on this. By the way, study something this week from the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the old discourse that is talking about the virtue of studying Torah together with the community. Just to let you know how important it is the fact that we come together and we study together. Is the previous Rebbe talked about how the power is different between blessings and prayers, and he says prayers is coming from here, and like I pray to God, asking God to do something, and Torah is the other way around. Torah is drawing a blessing, drawing the words of God from heaven downward. So he says that when we study Torah, we elicit God's blessings to our life. When we study Torah with the community, just like we daven with a minyan, it says the prayer of a community never gets rejected. So too, davening together with learning Torah together with other people, especially when we have a presence of a minyan, elicits much more blessings from heaven. So when we get together and we study Torah, that's one of the reasons also, like I told you last week, and you have access to a yarmulke I had this week, please, feel free to use it, because when we study Torah, we become connected to God. We elicit God's blessing into our life. So the fact that we take the time from our busy day to make time to study Torah, to dedicate that time to study Torah, it's huge, and it brings a lot of blessings to our life. And I myself see blessing in my life, certain things that would have taken me much longer to accomplish. When I take the time to study Torah with others, that it brings tremendous blessings. So thank you for joining us and trying to encourage more people to join. My goal is to get to a minyan, so we have a presence of Shekhinah, we could elicit much more blessings into our life. But even without the presence of time, the fact that it's more than one, it's few of us that study together, especially when it's something on an ongoing basis, it's important. And why is it important that we do it on an ongoing basis has to do with what we're discussing this week's in the Parsha. So the Torah talks about this week's in the Parsha about the sacrifices that was brought to the temple every day. Every day sacrifices were brought to the temple. And there is what we know to call the Ner Tamid. You ever been to the synagogue and you saw the Ner Tamid, the fire, that is like the candle on the top of the ark, that is always like either real light in it or fake light, but representation of the constant. This is a representation of the constant fire that was lit in the altar. So there is a discussion in the Talmud about what is the most important passage on the Torah. So one rabbi comes and says that the most important passage is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That the oneness of God, the unity of God, that is the most important thing. Another rabbi comes and say that there's like this. Ben Zoma said that the son of Zoma said Shema Yisrael is the most important part of the Torah. Ben Nanas says, the son of Nanas says, the most important passage in the Torah is love your fellow as yourself. Then we have Shimon ben Pazi said that really the most important part in the Torah is the Tamid sacrifice. God's commandment this week's in the Parsha, you should make the sacrifice every morning and every afternoon. And it's really require questions. Like if I ask you, tell me what is the most important thing between the two things? Believe in God, love to your fellow, or bringing the sacrifices. Which one will you choose the most important? Feel free to unmute yourself.
What was the second choice?
Believe in God, love your fellow. I mean, do like, love and unity and be nice to each other, and or the daily sacrifices in the temple.
Which do I think is more important, or which do I think that the Torah believes is most important?
Ah, good question. Good question. I guess, yeah. What do you think is the most important? Torah has few things to tell us. So within the Torah, if you would have to think what is most important, you know what? I guess, what do you think, and what do you think the Torah think is most important?
Well, I think kindness to my fellow human being is most important. If everyone felt that way, we'd be in a much better place. But I believe the Torah would say belief in God.
All right. So you said love your fellow, which is, Rabbi Akiva said it's a fundamental rule in the Torah, or believe in God. Okay. Anyone else?
I was going to say what David said, actually. In fact, I was going to say that you could get there by saying speaking for myself, I'm going to guess David's in the same boat as me, not being learned experts on the Torah like yourself, you might respond that being, as you did, being kind is in the Torah. So if you believe in God and the Torah, then fundamentally you're encompassing all those other things.
Correct. Now, the question is, I guess the interesting thing is that one rabbi comes and says that the halacha is like ben pazi, that the most important thing is the sacrifices. Have you ever heard, people saying Judaism is boring? Someone comes closer to Judaism, gets excited, he or she gets excited, this and that, and then they come to the synagogue and then they start feeling like, this is boring. It's the same, it's this routine of praying every day, getting up in the morning, doing the prayers, and then doing the mitzvot, whether it's putting on tefillin or lighting Shabbat candles, so whatever that is, it's kind of boring. And like others says, why does God care about the rituals and the actions? So like the physical action, how you get up in the morning, there's so many details. You got to put on your shirt first on your right hand, then on your left if you're righty. You got to dress in a certain way. You got to go to sleep in a certain way. All these routine things gets boring. It's not, Torah doesn't come and tell you. God didn't come in 10 Commandments and says, love me, love the world, to fix tikkun olam. He didn't say that. He gave us, don't murder, don't steal, don't covet what your friend have, some very physical actions. And it seems Judaism is bothered with the details of this action. How do you put on tefillin? You got to do 3 here, 7 there. You got to be this way, that way. Come on, why can't it be more exciting? Some other religion, what they did is took out the action and said, it's all about feelings and being excited and be spiritual and not so much about the action. But Judaism put great emphasis about the action. And the question is why? Definitely, God didn't. Definitely, if you look at the believing God, is more important. So why in this discussion also the sages says that the sacrifices, this ongoing daily prayers that we have today, is replace the sacrifice. This is the most important. So I guess a kind of difference between feelings and action. To such a degree, tomorrow, the 17th of Tammuz, we're starting the 3 weeks of mourning on the destruction of the temple. The 17th of Tammuz was the day when the siege over the walls of Jerusalem began, and then which finally led to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash on 3 weeks later on the 9th of Av. So you have 3 weeks of mourning on that. Tomorrow is a fast day that mark the beginning of that period. So one of the things that happened on these days, other than the Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the tablets, Moses breaking the tablets, was that after a long time, a period of siege over the walls of Jerusalem, he didn't know how to break the wall, how to get in there. And finally, somebody told them that every day, the Romans, the Jewish people are giving over the wall a coin full of, like a box full of gold coins, and they used these coins, and they gave them instead. They gave them from the wall, like so. With the string, they would pull out. They would send them the money, and they would give them 2 sheep to brought as a sacrifice. One day, instead of bringing 2 sacrifices, they sent them 2 pigs. And as soon as the pigs put their nails on the walls of Jerusalem, the wall fell. They were able to go in. Again, seeing how significant these sacrifices were, that as long as the Jewish people brought the sacrifices, they were okay. Once they stopped, no more. Now, so what is so significant again in this sacrifice, in these simple actions? And also why does God tell us about this now? We're already in the end of the book of Numbers. The Jewish people are, after 40 years of being in the desert, they're about to go into the land of Israel. They brought the sacrifice for 40 years. Why bother telling this commandment now before they go to Israel? So when it comes to this, anybody wants to suggest anything about this?
No, I'm just listening along. You're taking us somewhere, so I'm just following along.
Right, sound good. So the Rashi says about this section in this week Parsha, we're reading Parshat Pinchas. Rashi says that it's like a daughter of a king, Rashi says, that was about to die. She called her husband, and she told her husband that please make sure to continue to educate the children the way, make sure that they follow what I taught them, and so on and so forth. And the husband responded and said, which, by the way, speaking of passing, will make this class in memory of my grandmother, my father's mother, who passed away yesterday, Brendo Bas Chanoch, father's name was.
Sorry to hear.
Thank you. So she tell her husband, before I die, I want to make sure you continue to bring him up, with everything, the values that are important to me. I always have your wife wants your kids to do certain things, and you may feel that some things are not as important as your wife think it is. So kind of, she tells her husband, so make sure that, they do this and they do that. And her husband tell her and said, until you are, but you're taking the time to tell me what to do with them, you should take the time to tell them to continue to respect me and this and that, that's important for you. So Rashi says, Moshe Rabbeinu is about to pass away, to be passing away before they go to Israel. He goes to God also, and he tells God, please make sure to appoint them a leader. Before I pass, I want to make sure that I'm asking you, appoint the right leader to them. You should continue to lead them, and so on and so forth. And he's making this request. And God said to him, by the time you are asking me to take care of them, make sure to ask the Jews not to forget me after you passing. And that's what God says. Moshe Rabbeinu, he gave them the commandment of the sacrifice. He said, command them, make sure that they remember to bring the sacrifices every day, and so on and so forth. So Rashi says, God is like that king, and God is like the husband. Moshe is like the daughter of the king, and who turns to God, who, so to speak, the husband of the Jewish people, and tell them, make a request. God says, no, the most important thing is that they continue to give me my food every day. What's my food every day? It doesn't say love God. It doesn't say love your fellow. It says my food every day is the prayers, is the sacrifices. And it says the reason why this was given now before they go to Israel, because the question was, the Jewish people are going to go to Israel, but in what merit are they going to get to stay in Israel and not to go to exile, not to go back to Egypt? God says he won't bring them back to Egypt. But in what merit will the Jewish people stay in Israel? And God says it's the merit of the sacrifices that they bring every day to me. Meaning, what's the most important thing? In the daily routines that they have, is serving God, the simple actions that they do every day, That's the most important. Why is that most important? Why not love God? Why not love your fellow? So there's something very major here that, you know, it may be hard for me to tell you, you got to love me. For God to tell us, you have to love God. To develop feeling, it's harder. To develop love of God or awe of God, or, you know, the oneness of God, the believing in God's oneness and all of that, it takes some contemplation, it takes some work. But action, it's easy to do. Everybody can do action. So God says, if you will follow the action and you will follow the day-to-day routine of serving God through action, you're guaranteed to love God, you're guaranteed to love each other. But it begins with a simple action of a mitzvah. So when people ask, why put on tefillin every morning? Why do a physical mitzvah? Light Shabbos candles, say a prayer. Because this is God's food. This is what keeps our relationship with God. This is what keeps us going. These actions, sometimes we may do them unwillingly. That's easier to do, even if we don't have the right intention, even if we don't feel like that. But it's easier to just say, still do it. I'm going to do it, even if I don't feel like that. Many people say, Rabbi, I'm not going to put on tefillin because I don't know what tefillin is. I don't know what it means. I am not on that level where I feel this connection with God. The answer is it's not about feeling. It's about certain godly energy that need to come into the world to make our life better and to make the world better by following a very particular routine. It's, for example, take about a love between a husband and a wife. At the beginning, if you say that the relationship between a husband and a wife is all about the love, and the love always has to be skyrocketing, it's not going to always happen. It's not always going to be there. Because the nature is that the love, it's sometimes up here, then as you go down, it goes down. It doesn't remain the same. But if you care about your wife, if you have care about you and the certain routines that you follow to show each other, do something for each other, that's where the love is expressed. It's like a woman who came to the Rebbe and she had a hard time finding a husband and getting married. So the Rebbe told her, the problem is you're reading too many romans, you're reading too many books, and your conception of love is like that, what you read in the books. And that's not what the love between a husband and a wife. The love between a husband and a wife is something that's developed and built over years with them doing something for each other, something very routine, something being consistently doing, following something that you do. You know, if your wife comes back from having a baby from the hospital, and you could have all these balloons and flowers and like all this lovely atmosphere, but the house is a mess, and there's dishes in the kitchen, and there's clothes all over the place, and these daily routines, things need to be in the house for and take care of, either by you or by the cleaning person, or you didn't make sure it was done, then all the love and this won't matter. But if you didn't have any balloons, any flowers, and what you have is you make sure that the house is clean, they'll make your wife happy. Because the action, the love is expressed in the action. Through the action comes, it's a commitment to an action. That's why a daily physical mitzvah is so important and it's so critical. The daily physical mitzvah, the mitzvahs of action, is where we show our commitment to God. I get up every morning, no matter what, I'm going to put on this tefillin. I talked to these two students yesterday afternoon, and I asked them, they were here over Shabbos, celebrating my birthday, and they took upon themselves to start putting on tefillin. So I said, did you guys put on tefillin? I said, no, I guess I'll start tomorrow. I said, no, not tomorrow, today. You can do it from sunrise until sunset. So yeah, ideally would be to do it with the love and with the passion and to have the time to pray and to feel very spiritual. But you know, you don't have the time to do all of that. Don't wait until you have all this time to have all this feeling. You just take the tefillin, whether it's in the morning, whether it's in the afternoon, you put the tefillin on, you gave God his food, so to speak. And God is happy. Whatever needs to happen in the world, the energies that needs to come down to this world, to fix this world, to prepare it for the coming of Mashiach are done. So it makes a difference what we feel like. Eventually, obviously, it's better if we feel good and we feel spiritual and we do it with the right intention, but we're not waiting. The arts and the feeling is followed. I mean, it will follow after the action. The action has to come first. We could, I'm just going to stop the recording and then we can start a conversation if you want. Okay. Go ahead. Any thoughts? Anything you want to share with us?
Well, I do think that makes a lot of sense. In fact, one of the things that you read when you're reading stuff about, excuse me, marriage counseling and so forth, is they say, do things, things the person wants, whatever, even if you don't feel it and whatever. And kind of like you said, oftentimes the repetition of the action will actually engender the feelings. So it's not that you have to wait to feel a certain way before you take the action. I mean, I see that.
That's what Chassidus teaches too. Chassidus teaches that